Welcome to When One Thing Leads to Another, a podcast that takes you freewheeling down the great internet rabbit hole of trivia.
Each week we pick a starting point, and then who knows where all the twists, turns and tangents will take us. But we'll be sure to unearth a treasure trove of frivolous facts that will be as fascinating as they are, well, useless.
When One Thing Leads to Another is produced and presented by us, Helen and Bill Rich.
Our theme music is by Justin Mitchell.
This is episode 1. You can't always get what you want.
Right, last night I was listening to my vinyl copy of the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed, which, as you know, is a superb album.
It is.
And I was reading through the sleeve notes, and just try and imagine my surprise when I read who sang backing vocals on the song You Can't Always Get What You Want.
You can't always get what you want.
That very one.
Go on, who?
Now, there are 3 backing singers credited, right?
Right.
1 is Madeline Bell. 2, Doris Troy.
Yeah.
And, listen very carefully, I'll say this only once, Nanette Newman.
Nanette Newman?
Nanette Newman.
Nanette Newman, her off of the Fairy Liquid adverts.
Now you can get that airy scent of spring in a washing up liquid, because now there's new Spring Fresh Fairy.
So there I am, I'm thinking, can this really be the same Nanette Newman from the Fairy Liquid ads? Anyway, with a bit of digging, I was disappointed to find out that it's not actually that Nanette Newman.
OK, well that's a non-story then, isn't it?
Well, you think it's a non-story, but what is quite interesting about this is that the woman who is credited Nanette Newman wasn't actually called Nanette Newman. She was called Nanette Workman, who was an American backing singer who moved to London. However, she did not have the correct paperwork to work in England legitimately. And so when she sang on the album, she had to give a false name in case the authorities were to catch up with her, and they picked the name Nanette Newman.
And it just, so there was nothing to do with Fairy Liquid Nanette Newman, they just went for Newman.
It was so nearly interesting that Nanette Newman from the Fairy Liquid adverts sang on the Rolling Stones.
I thought I might Google Fairy Liquid and see if I can get any, interesting facts. I put in Fairy Liquid advert, and then you get a list of people also ask.
Oh yeah.
Who did the Fairy Liquid advert? Yeah. The 4th one down is Fairy Liquid safe to drink?
Well, what's the answer?
Bates' advice following ingestion of anionic and non-ionic detergents is to drink a glass of water or milk. Consultation with Talkspace suggests that low volume ingestion of Fairy Liquid causes no ill effects. However, if a large volume is ingested, nausea, vomiting and diarrhoea will result.
Okay.
But you'll have a lovely lemony breath. I just Googled Nanette Newman, the real Nanette Newman.
Oh yeah.
And I'm really happy to report that she's still alive.
Okay, good. That's a relief.
And interestingly, she was born in Northampton.
Okay.
It's not a town I would associate with Nanette Newman.
There should be a plaque in Northampton. No disrespect to anybody who lives or comes from Northampton, but it's not known for much, is it?
Actually, there's quite a lot of famous people from Northampton. It's not really.
Go on.
Well, Toby Anstis.
TV's Toby Anstis, yeah.
Which, I thought was interesting.
It's quite interesting, but I'm sure we can do a bit better than Toby Anstis, can't we?
I'm sure Toby Anstis would disagree. Alan Carr.
Oh, what, the bloke who wrote the Stop Smoking book, or the comedian?
Comedian. Yeah, it's the comedian.
Yeah, okay.
Richard Coles.
Oh, the Right Reverend Richard Coles, formerly of the Communards.
Yeah. Errol Flynn.
Errol Flynn. Toby Anstis has been bumped right down the list.
There is a lot of people that would surprise you and you wouldn't associate with Northampton. Whispering Bob Harris.
Ah, Whispering Bob. I work with a bloke, right, who has Bob, Whispering Bob, as his father-in-law.
Oh.
Yeah, he's the series producer on Channel 5's Police Interceptors.
There's more, it just gets better.
Yeah.
Leslie Joseph, Birds of a Feather, Dorian.
Oh, I feel like we're going in the wrong direction again.
Des O'Connor.
Was
Evacuated to Northampton in World War II and briefly played for Northampton Town FC.
Who knew?
We've digressed a little bit there. Getting back to Nanette Newman, she was, of course, the wife of Brian Forbes, the famous director. He did Whistle Down the Wind. And, of course, she was the mother of Emma Forbes.
Emma Forbes was famous for being a television presenter. I think she was on Live and Kicking.
Going Live, I think you'll find.
Oh, Going Live. Okay.
But then she did do Live and Kicking.
Okay,
so...
I stand corrected. Oh, no, you stand corrected. I stand vindicated.
Emma Forbes' godfather...
Go on.
Richard Attenborough.
Dickie Attenborough.
Yeah, but that's obviously because I think he was good pals with Brian Forbes.
Going back to the Rolling Stones' Let It Bleed album, and more specifically the cover, on which appears a cake.
That's a fine cake. It looks like there's a tyre.
Yeah, there's a tyre in the cake, so that's going to be a little bit rubbery.
Yeah,
and I think that's a clock,
face.
perhaps. And then there's this lovely cake. This cake, I was amazed to read, was made by...
Jane Asher.
Incorrect.
Oh, well, she... Ugh.
Delia Smith.
Oh.
Let's be having you! Come on!
Delia Smith made the cake that appears
So
on
that's
the
a real
roll.
cake, it's not just a...
That is a real cake. I'm on Delia Smith's website, and in the earliest days of Delia's career, she was asked to make a cake for a photographic shoot. She didn't know it was to grace the cover of the new album Let It Bleed from the Rolling Stones. All she was told was that it had to be really gaudy, and Delia obliged. And it says here she created a cake that certainly owes nothing to minimalism.
Wow. Good old Delia.
Now, you'll recall that I mentioned at the beginning that there were 3 backing singers featured on the Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want.
You did.
And we've dealt with the first one, Nanette Workman. Well, the second one was Doris Troy. She was also one of the female backup singers on The Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd. Mm. So I wonder if she did that wailing. What's that track where she was...
The Great Gig in the Sky. No, it wasn't Doris Troy, apparently. It says here it was Claire Torrey. And it says here as well, she covered the Dolly Parton song, Love is like a butterfly. That's obviously used as the theme tune to the BBC sitcom Butterfly, starring Wendy Craig.
And Geoffrey Palmer.
And Nicholas Lyndhurst.
And the other bloke who we can't remember.
Claire Torrey also sang backing vocals on Culture Club's The War Song. War is stupid and people are stupid.
And love means nothing in some strange quarters and war.
Her voice can also be heard singing, Love to love you, baby. She's done a lot. Oh, in 2004, she sued Pink Floyd and EMI for songwriting royalties on the basis that her contribution to The Great Gig in the Sky constituted co-authorship with keyboardist Richard Wright. Originally, she was paid the standard flat fee of £30 for Sunday studio work, and in 2005 an out-of-court settlement was reached in Torrey's favour.
Oh, okay.
Although the terms of the settlement were not disclosed.
Remain...
And all releases after 2005 carry an additional credit for vocal composition by Claire Torrey, The Great Gig in the Sky.
Well, good for Claire Torrey. She kicked some...
Yeah, because, you know, unless they handed her sheet music and said, sing that.
Yeah.
If she's vibing, then it's just like the whole riff with...
Yeah, it's a similar story to the bass line on Lou Reed's Walk on the Wild Side, played by Herbie Flowers. He was a session musician and was paid a flat session musician's rate, and yet he'd created this iconic bass line.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he received something like 30 quid rather than any royalties, which is ironic, of course, because that when Tribe Called Quest sampled it on their hit Can I Kick It?
Yes, you can.
They had to give 100% of the royalties to Lou Reed. And poor old Herbie Flowers didn't receive a penny.
That's shocking. So he didn't get any money? Lou Reed didn't give him any money?
No more than the flat fee.
Herbie should have followed in Claire Torrey's footsteps.
Yeah, well, yes.
Sued.
I did see a television programme about bass guitars or something, and there was old Herbie, and he said it was enough for him to be told by... because David Bowie was in the room, because it was the recording of Transformer, wasn't it? He said it was enough for Bowie and Lou Reed to say, that sounds great or something. That was enough for him.
Yeah, I think I still would have preferred the cash, to be honest. And that's like him off of The Police.
Oh, The Police, Andy Summers. Yeah, where
Every Breath You Take.
Where Every Breath You
Which
Take.
he didn't receive a penny from the cover by P. Diddy, did
No,
he?
supposedly not. Diddy heckers like. Sting wasn't exactly forthcoming in giving any royalties to old Andy Summers, although...
You do surprise me.
Of course, it's his guitar riff that is the very core of that song.
So we got a little bit sidetracked there on Claire Torrey, when actually we're talking about Doris Troy, one of the backing vocalists on You Can't Always Get What You Want. But her biggest hit was Just One Look in 1963, top 10 hit.
I don't
Just
recall it.
Just one look, da 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 da. It's a nice song. I think the Hollies made it sort of quite famous. Anyway, she was discovered by who?
Oh, I don't know. Give us a clue.
She was working as an usherette at the Apollo, where she was discovered by...
You mean the Apollo in New York City?
Not Hammersmith.
I'm going to guess Phil Spector.
No, James Brown.
James Brown live at the Apollo, of course.
Did you know that she moved to London in 1969 and was signed by the Beatles to their Apple Records label?
No, I did not know that.
Okay, she also sang backing vocals on Carly Simon's You're So Vain.
Right, rewinding yet again back to You Can't Always Get What You Want by the Rolling Stones and the other backing singer, Madeleine Bell. Let me tell you about her, shall I? She worked as a session singer, most notably backing Dusty Springfield.
Oh, I think Doris Troy might have backed Dusty as well.
She can also be found on early Donna Summer records.
Oh, as can Claire Torrey.
Oh, right.
Oh, well, they were obviously...
Well, they must have been mates.
They probably worked together, didn't they?
Her first major solo hit was a cover of Dee Dee Warwick's single, I'm Gonna Make You Love Me.
I'm gonna make you love me. Dee Dee Warwick, famously Dionne Warwick's sister, and probably then also aunt of Whitney Houston.
Yeah, that's all very interesting, but back to Madeleine Bell, please. I'm going to tell you something interesting about her if it kills me.
Go on then.
Do you remember the band Brotherhood of Man who...
Do I remember them?
Of course you do.
Yeah, of course I do.
What was
Save All Your Kisses for Me.
Save all your kisses for me.
Apparently, when I was very young,
yeah.
I used to sing that and be able to do the sort of dance. You know, it was your sort of feet...
Oh yeah,
sort of slide a little bit, and you do a little kick up.
Yeah, and the bloke in the tash used to wink at the camera.
Yeah,
and I used to think he was winking at me.
Oh,
which is interesting. Anyway, the two female members of Brotherhood of Man were called Sonny and Sue, and dear old Madeleine Bell used to sing with them.
What was the male member called? If you pardon the expression.
Let's leave male members out of this.
I just wanted to say male member.
Well, listen. We'll try keep that thought. We'll try and remember that. But I'm still not satisfied. We've got enough information about Madeleine Bell. Bell was the voice behind the 1980s advertising campaign for Brooke Bond D, a brand of tea bag in the UK.
I could do without Monday morning, struggling out of bed and yawning. Didn't get home till 3:15. I could do with the tea.
The music was composed by Ronnie Bond.
Any relation?
What, to James?
No, to Brooke Bond.
Oh, to Brooke Bond. Yeah, well, that's nepotism if ever I've heard it.
To James. Do you know who Ronnie Bond is?
Who is Ronnie Bond?
He's the original drummer with the Trogs. Which takes us back to Wild Thing.
Why? What's interesting about that?
The bass line.
What, Wild Thing?
Oh, what am I thinking of?
No, I think you've got yourself in a bit of a tangential knot there.
Well, because we were talking about Lou Reed. That's
Walk on the Wild Side.
Walk on the Wild Side.
You massive bellend.
Off. Thank you for listening to When One Thing Leads to Another, a podcast produced and presented by us, Helen and Bill Rich.
If you've enjoyed this episode, then please rate and review us on wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe, and that way you'll never miss an episode.
We'd also love to hear from you, especially if we've got any of our information wrong, or you have some more fascinating facts about something we've talked about, or you could even suggest a subject for our starting point.
Our email address is whenonethingleadstoanother@gmail.com.
A massive thank you to Justin Mitchell for letting us use his music as our theme song. It's a track called Homo Erectus, taken from his fantastical album called The Garden of Earthly Delights, which is available to buy from bandcamp.com.
Thanks also to Acast for hosting us.
Join us next week for another episode of When One Thing Leads to Another.
Please note that all facts have been found on the internet and therefore we cannot vouch for their veracity.